very warm good evening. I'm Vicki Treadell, the British High Commissioner, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the residence of the British High Commissioner. And I will introduce the panel in a moment, but let me just say a few warm words of welcome to the Pro Vice-Chancellor, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very, very warm welcome. I'm delighted once again, as I did last year, to welcome the University of London and its alumni community back to my residence and for another great evening and a great panel discussion. And then a few more refreshments and some nibbles will do the rounds afterwards. It's great to see the university back here, and I think it might be worth just pausing. You may all know this, being alumni, that the University of London was founded in 1836 for public benefit. And I think that's an important point because it talks about the DNA of this fine institution. For public benefit to promote education and knowledge. That was its aim, and a very worthy one it was too. And I see that there are a lot of women in the room, so it was also one of the first to permit women to study for degrees. So very enlightened for its time as well. And it's now, from those early days, it's developed considerably and now consists of an extraordinary group of 18 member institutions in London, which offer an unparalleled level of academic excellence and a range of degree programs to some 120,000 students studying on campus at some of the best universities in the world, as well as in its School of Advanced Study and the Institute in Paris. That bit I'm reading from my script, but if I could divert from it a little bit and just talk about the importance of these education links between our two countries, and the reason why I'm always happy to open my home and offer it as a venue for occasions like this. For all the alumni in the room, you will remember your time in the UK, I hope fondly. I hope at a time when you were emerging as young adults, your characters were being formed, and indeed your time at the university in the UK sort of set you on your path and on your course in life. For those who have had a connection with the university in a different way, and the fact that the university comes here regularly to reconnect with its alumni, to meet new people, potential students for the future, I think talks about the history and the relationship that Britain has with this country. It is a long-standing relationship, one that had a pre-independence period and then a post-independent period. And here we are 61 years later, when no one thought Malaysia might see a change of government, and there is for the first time a new government in Malaysia, starting on a new chapter of Malaysia's journey. And yet, it is relationships like this and the people-to-people connections that transcend governments. I can say that now of the relationship between the UK and Malaysia. And it is about the educational experience. It is about the people who've had that connection with Britain and the connection that our British institutions have with many Malaysians. When ambassadors and high commissioners speak about our people-to-people links, this is the kind of thing that they talk about. That unique tie that we have as a result of our education engagement. The knowledge you have gained of our country, and by the work we do in Malaysia, the knowledge we gain of yours. And today, of course, it is about a partnership. It is about what we can do together to not just gain something for our mutual interest today, but to build the new foundations for our future relationship and how the world evolves and how we work together to face that new reality. So offering to host events like this at this house is about helping to ensure that we nurture those ties, we nurture those relationships, and in this case, to celebrate the best of our institutions who are very much part of that story and part of that journey. The links between the University of London and Malaysia are long and extensive, particularly in these distant learning programs that they have now introduced. Malaysia represents one of the key countries in Southeast Asia with over 3,600 active students undertaking programs at present and many tens of thousands of alumni. Many of these current students are studying law degrees, where the University of London Distance Learning Programme is uniquely recognised for entry into the legal profession in Malaysia. And many of the students will attend local teaching institutions in various states across the country, providing a network of teaching support throughout their studies. So it's also about what we do and what we deliver in Malaysia. And the route that this university has taken is reflective of that many British institutions are taking to look at how they deliver in Malaysia. It's not just about traffic going to the United Kingdom, but what we can do and how we can deliver in this country as well. That's what true partnership is all about. I'm especially pleased that the university's panel discussion here, almost exactly 1 year ago, was one of the first to reference its Leading Women Year. 2018 is the 150th anniversary for the United Kingdom of women being permitted to take university examinations at the University of London. It is, of course, a great centenary year for women's rights to vote in the UK as well. 100 years ago, we achieved that for British women. And actually, the legacy of that across the Commonwealth, for example, meant that when Malaysia gained its independence, women continued to have the right to vote as a result of that. And we think of more modern countries in terms of time, you know, Switzerland, this developed country, only granted women the right to vote but a few short decades ago. So it's great to have the panel here, chaired as for last year, most ably, I'm sure, by Dr. Mary Stiasny. We have Aisha Menon, Beverly Hon, and Karen Chia Lee Lin. And I know that you're looking forward to an interesting panel discussion. I'm really grateful that university chose to use us again. We stand or fall by the quality of the service that we give. I hope you enjoy the evening, and it's great to have the university back. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Mary Stiasny. I'm Pro-Vice-Chancellor International of the University of London, and I'm delighted to be here this evening. But first, I would like to thank Her Excellency, Vicki Treadell, British High Commissioner to Malaysia, for her welcome speech and for hosting us in her residency this evening. And, if I may, thank you very much, Your Excellency. So this evening, our panel conversation is entitled More Seats at the Table, Achieving Leadership Equality in a Gendered World. But before we get into the main discussion, there are a few items of news about the University of London and Malaysia that I would like to just mention. Firstly, the future of plans in Malaysia, the relationship with the Malaysian Bar Council. A bursary arrangement for the LLM, the Master in Laws, has been agreed between the Malaysian Bar Council and the University of London. The Malaysian Bar Council estimates that over 8,000 of their members are University of London alumni. Thank you. A number that's believed to be a conservative estimate. The Malaysian Bar Council and the University of London colleagues have been working together recently to understand ways in which the university might support its members in their continuing professional development through local promotion of the LLM. This represents a strategic priority for the Malaysian Bar Council, as there's a new mandatory government directive that 30% of the entire MBC membership body should have a postgraduate qualification by 2025. And the University of London will provide to all eligible students a bursary on the University of London annual tuition fees. Through this collaboration, the university aims to develop a strong working relationship with the Malaysian Bar Council. Secondly, you've heard already about our Leading Women campaign. Let me just say a few more highlights from it. As you've heard, the campaign celebrates 150 years since the University of London opened up what then were called special examinations for women in 1868, when 9 women were admitted to the University of London to take those exams. And a few bits of colour from that event: those 9 women had 17 male examiners, just in case somebody had a bit of a fit in the middle of the exam. 17 male examiners and chaperones. There were a large number of chaperones in the room because we all knew that women couldn't take exams without a problem. I leave that for everyone to think about. 9 women took those exams. I believe it was 6 women who passed, and 5 women who passed, and the remaining 4, we're not quite sure what happened to them, but every single one of those women, we're not sure what happened to them in terms of exams, but every single one of them went on to be extremely successful, in most cases founding big educational establishments for the future. It was 10 more years in 1878 that the University of London opened up, literally permitted women to take the same examinations in the same way as men. But in both cases, this is a really important moment in our lives, in the life of society, because the University of London was the first in the UK to do so. These modest events, just 9 women at the beginning, these modest events were immensely significant moments for the university, for women, and for society as a whole. And the pioneering work of the University of London regarding women's education continues. Given the extraordinary reach of the University of London and its member institutions, we want to generate now debate around the issue of gender equality and actively provide opportunities for the next generation of women. It doesn't stop now. We can celebrate now, but we need to look to the future. And throughout this year, we've been celebrating this anniversary with a series of events and activities, including tonight's event. And there is a series of conversations which is being held around the world. And on Thursday, our colleagues at the Singapore Institute of Management will host one of those in the series of worldwide conversations on this topic. Our Vice-Chancellor. Let me say a few words about our Vice-Chancellor. As some of you may have heard, the university's Vice-Chancellor, Professor Sir Adrian Smith, stepped down in August to take up a role as the leader of the Alan Turing Institute. And I'm delighted that Professor Peter Koppelman is leading the university now as our interim Vice-Chancellor until the appointment of a permanent Vice-Chancellor. Professor Koppelman is the former principal of St George's University of London, one of the major medical schools in London, and has been a long-standing member of the university for many, many years, participating in collegiate council and chairing numerous committees and reviews. He was also a university trustee between 2011 and 2013 and received an honorary degree from the university in 2016. Most recently, Professor Koppelman has been advising the university on the development of distance learning programs to support health professionals. Another matter of interest, the University of London Worldwide rebrand. You will have known us, part of the university, you will have known us as the University of London International Academy. And from February 2018, this part of the university has a new name, University of London Worldwide. And the programs, the international programs title, the element of our brand for our distance and flexible learning programs and all external facing communication is now using the university name only. We have dropped international from the name. This is only the second rebrand in 160 years for these degrees. The change will clearly reflect the academic body issuing the academic award for our programs, University of London. We don't need to say more. And we believe this will clear up any confusion that arose with our previous branding. The rebrand also extends to all the teaching institutions that provide teaching support for our students from August this year. We appreciate that students and teaching institutions, as well as alumni, will play a key role in helping to support this change. And if you have any questions, please feel free to speak with any member of the university staff here this evening. I've already talked about the Malaysia Bar Council relationship, and we are particularly excited about this. But let me just say, whatever part of the university you're linked to, degrees from the University of London will be recognised throughout the world as evidence of your achievement at the highest level. In this regard, we invite everyone to keep in touch with the university. We'd like to hear of your future successes. If you are one of our alumni, or if you wish to hear more from us in the future, please pass your business card to one of the members of the university staff who are here tonight. You can also update your details on our website. We're working with our alumni to increase the activities we support in Kuala Lumpur and in Malaysia in general. And I would like to thank those leading our alumni group here in Malaysia for their interest and support in organising more activities for alumni in the region. Natalie Chong, Pravina Karunamurthy, Prasanna Karunamurthy, Daniel Bong, and Mr. Karunamurthy. And I'm sure there are others of you here this evening who are contributing to that work as well. The University of London has a heritage in providing global education, but also a responsibility to innovate and to make sure that we're continuing that mission of access to education for future generations. This includes ensuring we continue to provide learning opportunities for alumni throughout their lives, including through provocative and informative panel discussions, as I hope the one we have in store for you this evening will prove to be. Let me now introduce our panelists for tonight's event. You have in the brochure on your knee or on your chair or on the chair next to you details, much greater detail, about each of the panelist members. But it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Asha Menon, a law graduate from the University of London, and she is founder of the HR consultancy firm AM Talent Partners. Asha. Then next to her is Beverly Hon, who is the owner of the PR company XS Communications. She's also a writer of children's books, and she's a member of the International Cheer Union and a keen supporter of athletics. And finally, Karen Cheer, a law graduate of the University of London. As well as being an alumna, she is a partner at Choi & Company and Chiang & Arif. So, let me now ask, first of all, Asha to say a few words. What I'm going to do is ask each of our panel members to say a little bit about the topic, more seats at the table, and then we'll have a discussion, and then we will invite questions. And I'm going to be very fierce and keep everybody to time, I hope. So, Asha, please let me ask you first of all. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm truly honored to be here tonight, speaking about a topic that I'm very, very passionate about. And I would like to actually start by saying something that was quoted by Emma Watson. If we really truly believe and we are seeking for gender equality, and this is not achieved at home, when men are not literally playing their parts equally at home, how do we then expect to have equality outside of home? Now, if you reflect and ponder upon that statement, it is so profound and it has such a deep, powerful stance or nuances to that quote or that statement. So tonight, I think I would like to encourage all of you here to really contribute and also share your perspective and ask questions, and if you have anything that you would like us to debate. I have to say that maybe this is an ongoing quest. It's an ongoing challenge for us as women, especially being in a developing country. Having lived abroad, I definitely have different perspective to this topic. How is it applied across the world? But I would like to say that we are thriving. We are, there are some very, very crucial changes that we are seeing right now at this stage. So I would like to really encourage you to just sort of like really keep the discussions, in a very engaging fashion. So I would look forward to taking on questions and also sharing a bit more deeper, or rather getting deeper into the conversations later.
I have been involved in a lot of different industries. I am still involved in a lot of many things. As you can see, as Dr. Mary has said, I am a writer. I used to be an editor. I used to work at a newspaper. I am in sports. I have my own public relations company. And I have encountered a whole, I've encountered it all. I've encountered the boys' club. I've seen gender disparity in various industries. And to me, I've always been very outspoken. As an Asian being outspoken in this country, people will be like, God, where'd she come from? But honestly, as Asha said, it starts from the home. And the person who made me who I am, well, the persons, I would say like my dad, because he really wanted a son. And then I came along. And then he realized, you know what, I'll teach her to be as good as any boy. And I think I'm probably better than some of them. My godfather was a major in the British Army. And I learned more genteel side of it from him, but to be smarter about things. So I look forward to answering your questions. I'm more than prepared with that. In terms of, giving a grand speech and all that, with what I've read up, I'll pass it on to Karen.
Thank you very much, Bev. Now Karen.
Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am also quite a passionate believer of what we are speaking on today, and spoken like a true lawyer. It's all about facts and figures, because facts and figures do not lie. I was looking at some of the reports that's out there, and we are looking at Malaysia in the country being number 104 out of 144 countries in terms of gender disparity or parity. So we're really actually quite low on the list, on the ranking. We are probably 25%, below. And I will take that to a slightly smaller scale, and I will go back to our Malaysian bar. The Malaysian bar is made out of 18,000 lawyers, and out of the 18,000 lawyers, there are 38 members of the Bar Council who are sitting up there. And out of the 38 Bar Council members who are sitting out there, there's only approximately 10 women sitting there. So we're again talking about approximately the same percentage, which is 25%. And out of that 38 members, there is zero representation in terms of office bearers. And so I think we have a long way to go in terms of achieving what we want to achieve. And I'll leave the rest to the question and answer session later. But I do want to end off by saying that I think we ought to get the men involved in what we are doing, rather than just the women.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask a few questions and ask for your views about this. You've all mentioned the importance of equality, and you've talked about that starting at home. What are the important things that you think we need to do in order to actually make that happen? Asha, you started it.
Sure. So I will share a little bit about my personal experience from upbringing right up to, so I've been across various industries. So I started off my career as a cabin crew with the national carrier, and I've seen in terms of how equality did not really exist in that industry, and then I've moved on to actually to take on a very, very, if you were to ask me, I think we all today talk about the people, the employees of an organization being the most important asset of an organization. So, and I was the custodian of that, you know, entrusting that responsibility to the human resource department. So I was actually heading and leading the HR department for several companies, MNCs, and then I decided to zig and zag a little bit, so I kind of detoured from HR and read law, and then I found that after completing my law degree, and I did my pupillage at the family court in Sydney, and I didn't quite really enjoy it so much because it was very depressing. And then I got my way back into HR, and since I've been pretty much in HR for the last 17 years. So I'll start a little bit about my personal upbringing, where I really feel that that's the grassroots level that we need to tackle and we need to deal with before even moving into, you know, from the society aspect or the organization aspect. I think it starts from home. As they say, charity begins at home. And similarly, in this case, equality in the sense that I think there are some cultural traditions or religion beliefs where men is always most superior. Sorry, men, I mean, you know, to the guys here, it's not a man-bashing session, but I'm just trying to give perspective because I know that in this room, we have people from all over the world here, and different cultures, different beliefs, different practices as well. So for me, personally, I think being brought up in a very conventional, traditional setting, my dad has always been playing the more dominant role at home. So in terms of, there is no equalities of doing chores, there is no equality in terms of even getting my mom's voice heard in terms of opinions, in terms of thoughts, in terms of the decision making, nothing of that sort. But I was very conscious about it, and I began to reflect upon my childhood and my upbringing, and I was very, very conscious about making sure that that's not something that I'm going to be calling it a norm, or rather that's basically, it is what it is, as they say, but it's not, right? And it's not something that we should accept it as being the norm, right? So I consciously decided to be a rebel and to really take things in my own hands and to change the way I wanted to be treated. So I would say that, again, I think if you don't actually live up to the choices that you're making in life, then you are bound to succumb to whatever situation or whatever circumstances that is being put forward to you. So it is your choice. And I think if you are not interested to make that change, then no one else would be.
So how far do you think that schools and the media have a role in this? Because however much you make an effort yourself, there will be other influences.
But who are the media? Who are, you know, the society or that we really look up to? There is also a facade that we live behind the media, the society pressure that we are sort of like really succumbing ourselves to. They are the people. And I believe that, you know, the more you stand for what you believe, the more you make your voice heard. And I think that's basically going to change. So for example, never in history, looking back at Malaysia from a political landscape, we never had a woman deputy prime minister until the recent elections. So that in itself, it's a huge change. It's a huge mindset change. It's a huge, in terms of how it's very easy when we speak without realizing what connotations or what nuances that we're actually throwing, in a day-to-day conversation. But it has a large impact in terms of how we're seeing women today versus how we were seeing women probably about, 6 months ago.
Bev, do you want to comment?
Well, I would say, in terms of what she's mentioned, it's true, we do start at home, but then again, it's nature versus nurture, again, cultural norms, in the work that I do, for example, in sports, I am with the Entourage Commission in the International Cheer Union, and one of the things that we first drew up was the circles of influence, because your athlete is your most important person, and in this case, we would say it's the child, and who influences this person, this individual. So your immediate one would be family and friends, and then you've got your coaches and your schools, and then you've got the external, it goes into the wider circle where you have media, you have government. There's a lot of influences. It's true, some things along the way as it goes along, you get, in this case, for example, we now have a female deputy prime minister. It changes mindsets, it does. But how much it changes in the home, because you still get people saying, yeah, but she's just there for show. She doesn't say anything good. She doesn't do anything, I mean, we could go into that, but it would just digress. Yeah. In terms of, I agree, yes, we do start at home. I am the mother of a young boy. He's 12, but I have brought him up very differently from, I think, any normal Asian parent. I have avoided the cane. I've never used a cane on my child. I don't have one in the house. In terms of teaching him, there's no just, because I said no, so don't do it. It's a lot of, well, this are the repercussions. If you do this, this could happen, and that's the domino effect. Now tell me again what I told you, and then he has to repeat the whole thing. So the repetition in that sense, it's taught him this could happen, scenario A, scenario B. And I think overall, parenting is one of the things. But teaching him and then having him go to school, and then in school they're told a different thing, and now you can't do this or you can't say this. Again, that's where circles of influence. We can try our best as parents and guide them and keep them on that path. But I think, again, it's changing the broader mindset, because there's so many factors. Like in my line of work, I've worked in the newspaper, and there were a lot of women editors all at the top. Great, brilliant. You have women reaching the highest levels of management, like even being the general manager of the company. But what do? They've broken the glass ceiling, they've gone up, and then they've stamped it down like double A, so nobody else can come up. So what do you do in cases like that? So you can have people break that glass ceiling. You can have that gender parity at a certain level. But whether these people then extend the hand to say, the rest of you, come on up, we'll help you up, that's a different matter.
Thank you. Karen, do you want to come in?
I think I believe in the fact that each and every one of us, we are a product of our environment, which means that there's not one factor that makes us. It is everything that makes us. How we were brought up at home, how we were educated in school, and also the things that we are watching or whatever we're watching on media. And now, I think that is inclusive of social media, whatever contents that's on social media as well. So all those factors would contribute towards making the person or forming the kind of beliefs or perspectives in their lives. I think in one way or another, most of us probably were pushed into either believing in it, as in women's rights, either through negative impact or through a neutral environment. Or I think some people would actually do this because they've been influenced by whatever that they're reading, or they've been inspired by some role model out there. But I also believe that whatever that we are doing right now, it is actually not enough. There's this continuous advocacy that is still required. And it would probably take quite some time before we are able to penetrate through the patriarchal system that we have in this country. Because at this point in time, I think that system is still very, very obvious and apparent. We're nowhere near achieving what we want to achieve. It could be, the patriarchal system could be based on culture, it could be based on the environment, it could be based on religion, but it's very apparent. So, yeah.
Thank you. Now, one of the things I think you're saying is that whatever we achieve, it can still be fragile, that the fragility is there. It's interesting, I read in the Sunday paper on my way over, flying over, that Janet Yellen, who was the chair of the Federal Reserve, possibly the most powerful woman in banking in the world, said that women can get there, but then that they don't necessarily stay there, or that that you have large numbers of women and then that they reduce again in positions of power. I don't know if you've got any comments on that. Karen?
Yeah, actually, I think, again, you know, it's very apparent in terms of moving towards the senior level. I think we all go into the workforce on probably an equal playing field. And we have a lot more female students in the universities. I think they're all probably in 60% of students in the university are probably female. And so they come into the workforce together with the male, and they're all on level playing field. And then somehow, because of the patriarchal system or because of whatever culture that they've been brought up in, they slowly fall off the radar at about 30s. Probably because at about 30s they are they've got a family, and and it naturally falls onto the women to take care of the children. And then you will see that the numbers dwindle as the ages increase. And that is why it is all usually around in the 40s where people reach the senior level, because, you know, after having garnered sufficient experience at work and all that, then they reach a senior level at about 40s. But by that time, at 40s, we are looking at approximately maybe 15 to 20% of the workforce made up of females who are still there. And it just becomes reduced as we go higher. And I think that we need to be able to reach out to the ones who are younger and to help them, and like Bev said, bring them up together, to inspire them and bring them up and tell them that you can actually do whatever you are doing to have it all. You can have it all.
But I think there's also, I think that's right, and I'll come to you in a moment, but I think there's also some evidence, and I think this is what Janet Yellen was saying, is that, shall we say, 5 women appointed to senior posts this year. Next time people are appointed to those posts, there won't be women. There's a fragility in that structure, and I think that's a really interesting one. Bev, I don't know if you've got any comments on that.
I remember reading an article on that. There was something about all the women in the various positions of power. They've either been put there because it was a moment of crisis and they put them there. So the fallback is that, oh, if it didn't work out, it's her fault. Out next year, it's a guy next, you know, coming in next.
The glass cliff.
Yes, the glass cliff.
She'll fall off the edge.
And unfortunately, if you look at the track record of, you know, a lot of the women in the different positions of power, I think Angela Merkel's like the only one who's broken that, and she's made it an iron cliff. So it's very interesting. I think that's more in the global context. In the Malaysian context, it really does depend on the industry. It is interesting, though, that they say that there are fewer women engineers in overall, and then that you tend to get, it's again the different industries. So I think, for example, with, you know, going back to all of this, I'm meandering, but I'm sorry. But I'll relate it back to the industries I'm in because that's much easier. So in the newsroom, when I first joined the paper, it was completely different. I was trained old school. Old school is like what you watch in the movies, J. Jonah Jameson, Perry White yelling at you in front of everyone. That's how we were trained as journalists. It's much different now. You do it now and they just quit on the spot. But that's what we were trained as. And if you could make it through all that, you know, that tough yelling and getting your stories and getting your deadlines done, it was a matter of merit. You know, it's just whether you get your story in, whether you've got a good story, how well you write. So in the newsroom, while there were like little boys clubs, and sometimes, you know, some of the male editors make some snide comments, but overall, it was an environment where women could rise up. Again, it's just because it was so top-heavy, there was only so much that you could go. I was fortunate to be one of the youngest to be promoted to assistant editor at that point when I was in the company. Unfortunately, though, they refused to give me the pay because I was too young. Then it became ageism. So I've encountered gender, the whole gender equality thing, the gender discrimination. I've encountered ageism. There's been so much of it. And some of it ties in, honestly, it does. But in this case, you know, I think, again, it's back to the different industries. In the newsroom, it was very much on merit. If you could write, if you could smell a story, if you could get exclusives, you were the golden child.
Regardless of gender.
Regardless of gender.
Ash?
So I'll probably just go and take that question from a two-prong basis. So firstly, I think looking at it from a hiring and also performance aspect, I think again, like just hitting the nail there during hiring, because that's when the biasness or the discrimination actually happens at the hiring stage. And then obviously when women tend to progress, and if that progress is too rapid, again, questions that are being thrown at women, it's almost as if that women cannot progress at the same level or the same speed as men. And if they do, they are also seen in a very different light. And the second part to that is literally just, I think it comes down to the choices that we as women make. When there is a promotion or when there is a position that is being offered to a woman, oftentimes we ourselves doubt whether we can actually accomplish or rather take up the challenge and make sure that, you know, we attain success. So it's basically, I'm not good enough, I don't know if I can do this, I just don't have the confidence. Like Richard Branson said, even if you don't know how to do it, just take whatever that is being put forward to you and then go learn and how to do it, right? I think that's a quote that really stuck on to me, and I've done things that I've never imagined doing simply because either I don't have the skills or I don't have the knowledge, but later found that it wasn't that hard after all. So I think it's that mindset change, that mindset shift that we strongly have to encourage women to really step up. You know, I think if you are not confident and if that's the kind of energy that you're exuding, then hence it will be always questionable.
Karen, I see you nodding.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree, because I think women are all, in this stereotype out there about what women should be, what women should do, and, you know, from the legal profession, from my perspective, you know, when the women become lawyers, the first thing that they tell the women to do is that you've got to do conveyancing, you know, because conveyancing is better for women. You don't have to go to court. Or if you want to go to court, then you must do family law, you know, because family law is where you're most natural at, you know. I think we shouldn't do those things and have this generic mindset about what we have to do because people expect it of us just because of our gender. I think we should do what we want to do. And if we do eventually end up doing conveyancing, then, you know, it is a choice that you make, not because of your gender, but because that's what you are passionate about. So I am nodding because I feel her.
Bev, do you want to add anything?
I feel so different from these two. I think it's a throwback to, you know, it's kind of the upbringing. So I was taught, you know, by my dad to do a lot of things. I was taught to shoot a gun, shoot a bow and arrow. I was, you know, could do anything was possible. I followed him to meetings, to meet all kinds of people. You know, I've met politicians and stuff like that. I've watched my mum be a very capable person in her office as well, following her to work on certain days. And I've always seen that possibilities are there. It doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl. As an individual, you can do it. And I think that's probably made me a bit more aggressive than the people. So I've never taken no for an answer. I was always told, like when I wanted to get exclusives for my stories, oh, it's never been done. You know, I wanted an interview with Hollywood stars. Oh, it's never been done. At that point, I was trying to get an interview with Leonardo DiCaprio. But he just doesn't do interviews on this side of the world. But I did get an exclusive for The X-Files, and I met Gillian Anderson, and that was because I asked. People were just saying, it's never been done. I'm like, but did you ask? And they're like, not really. I was like, okay, I'm going to ask. And I did. And I got an exclusive. It was a regional exclusive on top of that. So I flew to London for that. I met her, came back with a regional exclusive. It was fantastic. I made me the golden child at the moment. You know, so it's a lot of what you can do. So now in terms of my work, it's handling public relations is different. As the owner of my own company, I don't have staff. I'm a one-person show. So I don't have this HR headache or the legal headache in that sense. It's just me, myself, and I kind of know where to navigate because from work experience. So in PR, it's more like perhaps what I observe in people's companies. So multinationals, it's a bit more random, I would say. You get a lot of women as managers, but how well they manage is a completely different story. In terms of sports, again, back to the International Cheer Union, they are now encouraging because we've applied for Olympic recognition for cheerleading, and we've gotten partial recognition. And the one thing they want to show is that equality and that parity. So they've been encouraging more women in the sport to be involved in the upper levels and to talk about, to be involved in policy and planning and stuff like that, which I'm more than happy to be involved in because I do have my opinions. So I'm glad people are willing to give me that platform.
So can I follow up, Bev, with a question about the books you write?
Yes.
You've all talked about the influences on children and the influences on us during our lives. Books are undoubtedly an influence.
They are.
And they can pass on gender stereotypes, they can pass on messages about patriarchy. How do you see that in relation to some of the books that you're writing?
Well, the books I've written, though, are about animals. So, unfortunately, no key message there.
There are male animals and female animals.
It's just like this. It's very descriptive. It's meant for 4 to 7 years old. It's a slow reveal of an animal, and it's more of like the rarer animals in Malaysia. What I did was my first sample, which I sent to my publisher, was a bit more, it had an environmental message and stuff of that, and I was told, like, no, the kids don't want that. And she's like, you tone it down and target a younger audience. And I did. And then I was told to tone it down further and target a different audience. Again, they've got different writers, different authors covering all sorts of things in the whole stable, in the whole, in their whole, stable of authors in that sense. So I'm just filling a little gap. And my interest, honestly, is just on the animals because that's what I grew up with. And it's, I think there are times I'm like, okay, we could do something with a message, and I have come up with some of it, but again, publishers have the final say, and they'd be like, I don't think kids want that, so hard to say.
So what about the social media, Karen? You mentioned that earlier. Social media has a role. How far does it have a role to play in helping form our opinions and our views, and the roles we play?
I actually use social media the other way around, which is to advocate on women's rights. But, because social media, you also get a steady flow of news coming in from the news line that you are following. And a lot of the news, local news I'm speaking of, involve things like child marriages. We have a spat of that recently. We were proud of the fact that we had the first Deputy Prime Minister who's a woman. We've also had a lot of issues about divorced women who have not been supported financially by the husbands. So these are the news that we get over social media. People have stopped reading the newspaper, the hard copy newspaper, and they're all glued to their phones, and that's what they're reading at the moment. I actually use the social media in order to share inspiring stories about how women can also achieve gender parity in workplace, in chasing their dreams, in chasing their passion. I think that when I send out those news or that message across, my friends, okay, my friends are going to read it, and they're going to be influenced by it, and they're going to, you know, slowly build this advocacy towards gender parity, and I think that it can influence us.
Thank you very much. And Asha, let's come to the university itself. As an alumna, how or what role do you think the university can play in moving forward the gender equality debate and reality?
I think to start with, to have forums like this on a more regular and frequent basis, and basically just to spread the awareness, and perhaps even introducing courses that are pretty much, I would say, you know, not so much in terms of like courses where it's a 50-50, but rather, you know, courses that are predominantly much of an interest to women, and also leadership courses, so that in a sense that the university can actually play an important role to empower women to step up and take on leadership roles, so that just sort of like gives them that confidence and whatever skills that they believe that, you know, it's a shortage for them.
Thank you. That's an agenda for us to move forward, but let's just pause, and if the panel is happy, I'm going to invite questions now from the audience, from the floor, from everybody else here, and we'll see if there are questions for us to put to the panel. If you are going to ask a question, can you indicate, can you wait until the microphone reaches you, and then can you speak into the microphone and perhaps tell us who you are and what you're doing? So we've got one here in the middle. Thank you. We've got...
Hi, my name is Sankita Matu. I'm a student of King's College London and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Very excited to be here and hear all the viewpoints. So many things resonated and so many things which I wish to comment on. I think something that I want to highlight, which I think many people are not aware of. This summer I had the privilege of meeting with two ladies in Denmark. So obviously the Scandinavian countries are known to be the forerunners in terms of, you know, gender parity and women in senior positions, etc. So I met with these two ladies. One of them teaches at the Copenhagen Business School, and the other one has her consultancy, and she looks at sort of gender equality issues, etc. in the region. And the interesting thing that they shared with me was that things are definitely, you know, better in the Scandinavian countries. They've achieved better statistics and numbers, right, than in Asia. But the reality is such that the people, you know, people believe that they're already there. They think that there's no more that needs to be done. And unfortunately, the reality is that there's still a lot more that needs to be done. One of the interesting facts that they mentioned was that, you know, diversity is not just about gender, it's about so many other things. And because there's a belief that gender has been done, you know, we've succeeded in gender equality, we're focusing on LGBT, special needs, etc., which absolutely should be done. But nobody talks about gender anymore. It's boring, it's, you know, previous decades' topic. And it's the white elephant in the room. So interestingly enough, these women, when they were talking to me, and I work in the area of diversity and inclusion, and I was explaining the various, you know, initiatives we have here, Lead in Malaysia, Women in Tech, Girls in Tech, you know, Lead Women, 30% Club, their jaws dropped. They were like, you guys are so much more you're dealing with it. You've got a bigger problem, but at least you're doing something about it. Whereas we've got this white elephant in the room, and we can't seem to get the conversation started again. So I thought I just wanted to highlight that, because I wonder whether you feel that you have the same in the rest of Europe.
Thank you very much. So the issue then, while some people feel we're moving on, or in some countries, let's move on and look at other forms of diversity, which have to be looked at, that we've kind of got complacent about gender. Your views. Who's going to go first? Go on, Bev.
Have we gotten complacent about gender?
Is there a danger, perhaps? Because I think you're saying in Malaysia that's still being tackled.
Yeah, I think the point is that, even countries that we look up to, and we should, they still haven't got there. So I think what I'm saying is that the solution is still to be found. Do we need to disrupt the way that, the fabric of society actually is put together?
And is it all very fragile? Yeah. Go on then, Bev.
Well, I'll talk about the boys' club now. So, I won't say specifically which industry, because then it starts pinpointing where. But there is, you have people who push this, we need to have women in the front, and it's always, everyone wants to have the women in the front, that whole equality thing, because it looks good. But honestly, at the end of the day, sometimes, some decisions, it is the boys' club that is, if you haven't broken through that, and even if you do, you get to hang out with them. It doesn't necessarily mean you've gotten to that place where you're an equal. They still do things, where it's just, we'll decide it, and then, rules are flexible for the more, even if you have problematic people in the group, the rules are bent for them. But if a woman were to do the same thing, I think we'd be out of it just right away. So it really does, I understand the whole elephant in the room thing, but sometimes when it is hard to specifically be very vocal about it as well, because you're in this precarious position where they'll be like, she's not playing the game, so maybe we shouldn't have her in the group.
So that emphasizes and undermines the fragility. Go on then, Karen.
Well, back to facts and figures. According to the Global Index for Gender Parity, it will take us approximately 200 over years before we can actually achieve that equality, that level of equality. So, being complacent, I don't think that is something that we should be feeling at the moment. Why are we feeling complacent? I think the reason why we're feeling complacent is because I think the people are all saying the right things, but they're not actually translating that into action, and we're actually not seeing that as a matter of result. So for example, a woman will say, I want 30% representation on the board of directors. And you see that there's actually the men going, say, yes, okay, fine, I can agree to that kind of diversity, and I want that kind of inclusion in the board of directors. But when it comes to actual appointment of the directors onto the board, you'll find that 30% is actually not being translated into action. Same thing with the manifesto that we're having with Pakatan Harapan at the moment. So they have a manifesto that says, I'm going to appoint 30% of women representation to sit in the parliament. And yet, at the end of the day, when we're looking at the numbers, we're actually not seeing 30%. So this lip service that people are actually giving you, this, to please you, to say things that make you happy. And, so people are happy, and then they become complacent. But, really, we're far from that. The reality is we're really very far from it.
Asha, do you want to comment?
Yeah, but, just to touch on a little bit, I think it is time that we actually see gender as a spectrum as opposed to two opposing ideals, And again, if you don't constantly talk about it, it's very, very easy to fall off and to have it, fall off between the cracks. And I say these because I think having the added advantage of being in HR, and I see how many times women, when they are being offered a job, they hesitate to negotiate when it comes to salary. Whereas the men, they don't even think twice. It's like, rightfully, it's my right, I'm entitled to it, and hence I'm going to ask, right? And And again, like if we don't continue to speak about this, we don't continue to encourage women to step up and to know what you're worth, what you're actually worth for, right? Then it's very easy to sort of like just drop off again.
Can I add to that?
Go on, Bev.
Okay, so this is where we talk about the glass ceiling that's been put down,
The glass
double layer. So I have been in this position where I have asked for a higher wage. I said I would like to continue staying in this company. I've received a job offer elsewhere, but I would like to continue staying in this company. But I didn't just go in with, with nothing. I, mentioned the work I did. I've done this project. It's brought in this X amount of money, because money is always important. This brings in these numbers and these figures. And I was told, over here, sometimes when you can work, we tend to give you more work. So they just would not give me a higher wage. It was just like, but everybody does work. Yeah, but that deadwood over there is earning 10,000, he's doing nothing. So I'm working my butt off in 3 sections, and you're telling me that you might just give me more work for nothing else.
I think Asha wants to come back in.
Yeah, sorry. I think that's actually looking at minority. Like, how many women like you would actually have the courage and stand up and say that this is what my worth is and this is what I'm going to demand and ask? Probably 0.001%.
I think the statistics show that women are far less likely to go for jobs, that they panic about whether they've got all the criteria, whereas men will go for them regardless. And then when they get the job, the statistics show that women, with some notable and worthy exceptions, will not try and negotiate the salaries. So I think there's a message in that for us. Let's take the next question.
Hello, I'm Ivy, and I'm in finance. Actually, in finance, I would say we have quite a lot of female in finance who are doing pretty well. But I definitely echo what you are saying, my mother was only given high school education as compared to her sibling who is a male, and he gets to go to university. So that immediately sets a different pathway for her livelihood. That's number one. Number two, from young, girls are asked to play with dolls. Don't take chances, don't take risks, don't kick a ball, don't jump off cliffs. But guys, for boys, just go rough it up, you'll be fine. So from there, you could see that boys from very young age are taught to take risks. Even if you don't know how to kick that ball, go try it out. But for girls, just stay pretty. Sit at a corner, cross your legs. I'm sorry, everyone's crossing their legs. So this is why I want to say that what you say is totally correct. I was given a chance to take on some projects, and I'm so critical of whether I fulfill all the job description. If I don't fulfill at least 80%, I'll be like, maybe not. But my male counterpart will be like, hey, I could do it, even though he's like 20% only fulfilling whatever JD is there. So I think that definitely echoes. So the upbringing is definitely there. So whether you take chances or not, and even speaking up in an Asian culture, not just women, even men are so shy to ask questions. When I go to any company visits, meeting up with any corporations, if they ask, do you have any questions to the members of the public, it's always quiet. But when it's during the networking session, then everyone will be like, hey, actually I have a question, but I'm too shy to ask. So it's not just the women, but also the men. So it's not, I think what I'm trying to say is that if you want something, it's, you have to step up. But then again, I have this sideline. What about maternity? So when you talk about facts and figures, then you go to productivity. And then they'll be like, oh, but you took 3 months maternity this year. Could I give you the full bonus payout? Well, your male counterpart did not take that 3 months paid maternity. And then I'm like, but women are expected, if you want to have a family, then you have to take that time off. So what then? How do you argue? And when they ask for facts and figures, but they are more productive. So do I actually work that 3 months to catch up on my KPI?
Okay.
That's my question, yeah.
Thank you. Do you want to take that first, Asha?
Yeah, I'll take that. And I'll probably just expand what you just said, the last point. So I was actually at a girls' night out a couple of weeks back. And obviously, among my friends, we have kids. And so what happened was a friend of mine who literally, I think she's got a really young toddler, under a 1-year-old. And so everybody kind of just asked her, hey, where's your baby? And she said, oh, my baby's at home with my husband. And immediately the response was, oh, so sweet. What was that all about? Like, the baby is with the dad, and the dad is looking after the child, and anyone sees any kind of special father award that he deserves to be given to? Right? Like, how many of us literally, before we go and plan for a weekend, or before we even indulge and say, I want to go and catch a movie today, right? You would say, yes, I'm deciding, I'm making that happen tonight. No, we'll always go, I have to check with my husband. So, I mean, I totally get you, right? Because I feel that sometimes it is what we put ourselves into, or rather, we unconsciously, consciously, I don't know. But if we are allowing ourselves to be in that situation, then obviously that is going to continue, right? So I mean, I'm just sharing this because I feel comfortable as a single mom, and my daughter's sitting here right in the crowd today, and I practice conscious parenting. The books that she reads is about rebel girls. She's learning about Frida Kahlo. She's learning about Maya Angelou, right? Why? Because I do not want our future generations to be in the same fate as we have been, especially like with me. I mean, to come out and to literally speak to my parents, and my father was a cop, and he was literally in a situation where we had timetables, and as girls, we never were allowed to voice out, right? You cannot say no, and I can relate to most Asians here today. Saying no, we always feel guilty about saying no. Especially so when someone of a higher authority or someone in power asking you to do something, and it's like almost an obligation. Even though you don't want to do it, you will say yes, and then later you'll whinge and whine and grumble and say, oh gosh, how my life has become so miserable because I've taken on something, or I've not had the courage to say no, right? And no is an answer. You don't need to go on and explain or provide explanation or justification or rationale to saying no. So I think it starts with minor things like that, to be able to say no, and to say no in a very polite, very delicate, diplomatic way, and to leave it there. I think when we step up and we are able to really stand for what we believe for, that's when the change is going to happen.
So saying no, learning to take risks and taking them and making things happen. Karen.
Ivy, great question, because I think that's the one that I'm waiting for, actually. We are built differently. The women, we are, we're going to get pregnant, we're going to, take maternity leave, and the men, they're not going to get that, So, we're special in that way, and I don't see why we should, be whining about the fact that we don't get the bonus. But I really think actually in that kind of situation there is an answer to it, and there's always a solution. The problem is, are we being treated fairly? Are we being treated, given the same treatment by the management as far as this bonus is concerned? If we are looking at the work performance, it isn't as if you have not been working the entire year. You have been, okay? It's just that 2 months or 3 months that you're taking off. And for the rest of the 9 to 10 months, you were actually working. And during that 9 months that you were working, surely they can actually assess your work performance. And surely the bonus can be given to you in that sense. And I'm sure there's a solution in terms of, do you want to come up with a formula on how you want to prorate it? There must be a way to deal with that kind of situation instead of saying, oh, well, that's it, I'm giving birth this year and therefore no bonus for me. So there must be a formula that you can work on with the management in order to solve this problem, number one. Number two, I think we actually need to get the senior level people or the management to actually commit to, making the environment within the workplace to be equal for men and for women. So, fine. They're going to say, you're not going to be able to get as much bonus as the men, but you are still able to go to your management and say, okay, fine, why don't I fight for certain things which the women should be entitled to as far as the workplace is concerned? Let me have a nursing room. Let me have a place where, I can actually put my kids in when they finish school, like a childcare. Are they able to actually do that? I mean, I don't think we need necessarily to have the same things that the men have. We can have our own things, and the men can't have that. I mean, the men can't go into the nursing room. Who would want them there, right? So, I mean, we have our things. They can have their things. And I really don't think that there's anything wrong in us being different from them. And I also don't think that it is wrong for us to be talking about women's rights or women's entitlement and still be able to look pretty with our legs crossed. So I really don't think that we should be concentrating too much on the differences that make us different.
Bev, do you want to come in?
Again, very different in the newspaper. Our bonus was contractual. If they ever said they were going to pay us, we'd haul them to industrial court. I was in the union, so I knew all this. Now, the interesting thing about working in the newspaper is that bonus was contractual. There was no way they could touch that. Because of the nature of the business, there was a lot of accumulated leave, a lot of off days. There were, these were days we could never use because leave was always frozen towards holidays. There was always some emergency, some big thing towards elections, towards budgets. Nobody could go anywhere. So people accumulated these things. When I had my son, I took 4 months off. So 2 plus 2, 2 contractual, 2 was, it's just part of the whole thing. You get maternity, and then I took another 2 because I had that many days. I was going to extend it to 6, and they're like, no, we want you back to work. But that's also because we had a colleague a few years before that, who had so much leave, she took a whole year off. They had to pay her, they had to give her a bonus. Now, ex gratia was the one that you would get the extra pay based on performance and stuff, but that was also kind of prorated dependent on the company, so everyone got it across the board. So in this case, I would say in the newspaper industry, it doesn't really work because we've got people who fight for their rights. You've got the union protecting the bonuses, and I think in terms of what management allows, that's where how long you're allowed to go and leave. In that case, that woman set the record by going off for a whole year, and they realized that's not very good actually in terms of work. So
something to add. I want to say that I think it's time that we also, like how we have been advocating and coming up and making sure that our voice are being heard. So we've managed to get from 60 days maternity leave to 90 days now. But why don't the men actually also ask that you want paternity leave? And so hence you split half-half, right? Rather than the women taking the brunt of being away for 3 months, you could probably be away for 2 months and get, your spouse to actually take 1 month of paternity leave. So I think it's about time that we also equally advocate the men's agenda in getting them to play a more active role in terms of nurturing, in terms of the household aspect as well.
On that note, maybe this is about working on the men's agenda as well. I think we're going to stop. we're going to stop, and it'll give us a chance for people to talk informally over some refreshments. But before we stop, can I say a huge thank you on your behalf, and on my behalf, and on behalf of the University of London, to Asha, to Bev, and to Karen. Please join me in thanking them.
Thank you for having us.
And please join us now with some refreshments and a chance to talk informally over a drink and some snacks. Thank you very much.